have any stories to share about when you kind of came to a point in time where you're like, my thinking was the wrong thinking, and what was that?
Yeah, lots of that. That's like a pivot or persevere moment, right? And so we did a bunch of these. We definitely did the wrong thing. So straight after when we launched, there was a royalties kind of fiasco on Solana where Magic Eden was basically having their lunch eaten by Your, and so Your was at 0%. Well, you could opt to not pay royalties on NFTs, and so they got to the point of having like 50-something% market share over Magic Eden, which was 98% before that. And so Magic Eden they didn't do a knee-jerk reaction, but their reaction was, well, we're just going to drop royalties and make them optional as well, which was like all the lifeblood of the entire Solana ecosystem for NFTs, which kind of caused a massive issue. It was straight after we launched. And so we thought, like, this is a bit of an existential threat to the entire ecosystem. If there's no projects in the ecosystem, it doesn't matter how good the CRM is that we're building, there's going to be no one to use it. So we developed, within about a week, the first royalty protection and enforcement technology on Solana. And so we did all that, but it was like pushing shit uphill, because what we didn't understand at the time was the big players in the market, they wanted to control. So Metaplex, which is the, they created the standards for NFTs for the whole Solana ecosystem. They wanted to be the ones that controlled the standard. And so we just got flipped over. So everything that we did, didn't matter how good it was, all our holders, all the other projects that were using us were speaking really, really highly of us. They're just pushing shit uphill. And so we realized after about 8 weeks and quite a bit of money going into it, that it was just a losing battle. Like, we couldn't hold the narrative because the narrative was controlled on the US time zone. And so there's only so many hours that you can stay awake at night time before it starts to really destroy you. And so we had to cut losses, right? And it was a pivot or persevere moment. We sat down as founders and we realized, like, we've put in about 100 grand worth of dev time into this thing. It's got some traction, but it's not really enough traction to call it product market fit. What was really cool and what was really hard to do was we had a lot of founders literally saying to us, like, what you're doing has helped us to still function. Like, if it wasn't for you guys, we would have closed up shop weeks ago. And what you've built is like changed our lives. It's allowed us to keep going because we thought we were over. And so that was like, you know, at the early days, it was like pumping us up. It's like, yeah, we're on the right track, but we just couldn't make, we couldn't get the big, like, Web3 is weird. It doesn't matter how many small projects you get. People look at like these blue chip projects, and if you don't have any blue chip projects, they're like, it must be shit. Right, and the blue chip projects, the thing is, when it comes to royalties, they all had raised, you know, 5, 10, 15, $20 million, and so they didn't need to worry about royalties. So they were just sitting on the sidelines going like, we don't care, we're going to wait, we've got 5 years worth of runway, we're not going to jump to a decision right now. So we couldn't get any blue chips on board. So people were like, it's not really going anywhere. So we ended up making the decision to pivot and go back to what we were originally building. But it wasn't easy, and I wish with the information that we got that we did that earlier. We kind of had the inclination at about the 4-week mark out of the 8-week cycle that we're doing. But just the only thing that changed it was all the founders telling us how much it was helping them, keeping them afloat, all that kind of stuff. And we're like, and we just burned like another 50 grand doing that. So what I would say is, yeah, trust your gut on those kind of things. I really wish I did that earlier.
Good lesson, mate. Because I was going to ask, like, what turned it for you, the pivot or persevere, and why that time?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess, like, there's a point in time where you're like, this is the time to call the losses.
Yeah, I mean, like, we had about 300 projects lined up to use us in our Discord, and then what also happened at the same time was Aptos launched, another blockchain, and almost 300 of our potential clients moved across to Aptos straight away, because most projects don't have any technology built on chain before they launch. It's just the NFT, right? And so for them, it was like, well, they've got royalties, so we're just not going to launch on Solana, we're going over there. And we lost literally like 99.9% of our projects just moved straight across. It was like 3 months worth of business development, lining everyone up, getting everyone ready.
No loyalty, right?
It's just chase the money, right? You can't blame them, right? Aptos at the time was taking off purely because of it, so they're just chasing the money. But yeah.
Fair enough, mate.
Cool. One of the items that we're persevering with at the moment all started with a wait list, and we were fortunate enough to generate quite a large waiting list to launch our product in the US. I think that about 28 or 29,000 people signed up to use the product. So we raise money to launch in the US. We spent a lot of money setting up the legal framework. You're promoting the business pre-launch, setting up the technical infrastructure, banking, payment rails, data providers, everything. And unfortunately, due to the recent turmoil with the regulatory landscape in the US, the banking sector has decided to debank a lot of crypto projects, us included. There are now other providers out there that will provide banking payment rails for us, but at the end of the day, a lot of these guys don't have redundancy. So even if you do invest to integrate and go through due diligence with some of these banking partners, at any point in time, they could also fall victim to the regulatory pressures. So we're really just it's still a low barrier for us to launch there, but we're really just kind of sitting back in a bit of a holding pattern to monitor the situation, because the last thing that we want to do is invest and then the similar situation happens. So I've been chatting with guys at Virtual Gaming Worlds here who have similar challenges with payment rails in different jurisdictions, because they're a gaming company and often their banking rails get taken down, and their strategy is to integrate with 5 or 6 different payment rails in case 1 or 2 or 3 go down. They can still able to operate, but of course VGW have a different level of capital than we do. So it's just we're still navigating this. We're in a holding pattern. We won't pivot, we'll persevere, but it is a process and it takes time to roll through.
So Blake, as the CEO of Bamboo, what is it that you kind of deploy as a strategy to choose to persevere?
Yeah, I think we've invested a lot of money and it's so close. There's just some not small, but there's just risks to manage. And I think, with time, we can gather more data about the regulatory environment, the stability of the payment rails and the banking partners, about whether we decide to go with one or another. And that's kind of what we're, just treading water on.
What I find really fascinating is that the story of failure depends on the time scale. You kind of basically wait out a failure until it becomes a success. Because if you're the person who's trying to get to the Olympics or whatever, and then you fail 4 times, on the 5th time you make it, it's actually just that whole, and you actually don't know, because we also don't price in how much kind of luck and external factors contribute to those ultimate successes. We just see them as a point in time, and we think, oh, success is a balance sheet. It's a point in time, this thing succeeded, so whatever they did before that worked, but we kind of don't, we ignore that whole void of the waiting period. So I think it's it's a real testament to the grit and resilience of a founder to be able to do that. Is my comment.
So with regards to HbarSuite, I think critiquing some of the things that have happened with HbarSuite, I would say potentially focusing a little bit more on making it more prestige for having a user interface and user experience, and just having a state of the art, focusing a little bit more on a pretty looking website, and but one of the thing is all of the services that have been created by HbarSuite is to showcase the actual core technology and the possibilities of the uses. So if we were to spend more time focusing on some of the user interface improvements, we may not be where we are right now. So we took a risk and didn't go for the pretty fancy thing, but we put it further down the roadmap. But if we had done that, maybe things might be slightly different. With regards to possibly getting funding from associations or different foundations, for example, or even just investors in itself. We wanted to focus on the back end of things, and really we wanted to be able to create something that everyone will be able to build on top of and use it for themselves. Like, for example, our launchpad and our DAO. somebody could actually, because we have it open sourced, somebody could come in and use our services, integrate it into their own platform to leverage the system that we've created, and they could make it even prettier if that's what they wanted to focus on. So if there was one thing, I would say the UI and UX interfaces.
Well, the reality is like there's a limited amount of energy, right? And everything is a opportunity cost. So the trade-offs that you make at a point in time, I think the benefit for having this conversation now is that it kind of enlivens other founders or builders or investors if you're at a crossroads to consider some of these lessons, but you guys are kind of living through it and kind of sharing the experience with all of us. So somebody has to have a go and kind of like figure it out. That's not a linear process. We have 20 odd minutes for the community to ask some questions. Please, I would encourage you to make them honest questions. This is not the time and place, given the level of conversation we've been having, to like get you and put people on the spot. Like everyone's pretty open, and so I would encourage some like robust questions, but like coming from an honest place. Yes.
I'm just curious to know if you think DeFi generally is living up to the idea of it being truly decentralized. I'm just curious to what you think on that issue. Is it a technology will develop more in the future to alleviate some of the centralizing aspects of it, or it's decentralized enough that?
So my kind of view on this is that, again, it's a little bit slanted because I've got a friend of mine that's a lawyer over in the Cayman Islands, and all he does is this stuff.
Give us the
right?
name too, as well.
So what he does is he sets up DAOs and that kind of stuff so that they're legally a DAO. So what they do is it's a business that owns another business, but that business owns the first business, so there's no actual human entity in the business. So the two businesses, it's weird. It's the only jurisdiction in the world where you can do it. It's weird. And so I talked to him at length about this kind of stuff, and his point of view is the same as mine, which is like, it's like an onion. The more layers you peel back, you get to a point where it's centralized. There's a team somewhere building something, and whether they're in the same building or not, or they're in the same Slack channels or the same Discord, it's centralized in one way or another, right? And so you have to dial in what your level of decentralization is and what your risk tolerance is to that.
I have a view. I know that I'm the mod, but I have a view. So, one of the challenges that you'll find is that you've got two competing worldviews at an intersection with each other. The first worldview is a decentralized platform, Web3. They want to divvy up the profits or the value amongst the actors. And it's not about like maximizing the profits for a central entity. It's about creating the most amount of value for the ecosystem and then divvying that up based on all of the work that people have done. Then they get invested into, because they want to scale, because this is a cool idea, right? They want to get it to the masses. They get invested into by a VC with a totally opposite business model, which is profit maximization. And so you've got these two business models, and the one with the most power will probably win in that scenario. So what you end up finding is that instead of Web3 emancipating us from the challenges of TradFi and Web2, is that they're getting kind of like hijacked by institutional, centralized, like traditional worldviews that see this as yet another surface area, kind of like we've already pillaged and extracted from the like physical surface area of the biosphere. Let's create like Web2 digital projects and websites and stuff, and we can like capitalize and extract from that. And now there's this third thing, Web3, where that's another kind of surface area that can be extracted from and growth taken to the center. So I think until you can have mission-aligned investors that see profit and purpose as being coexistent, then you will not have a truly decentralized, scalable Web3 unless it was fully grassroots and self-funded.
I was thinking more along the lines of the infrastructure.
Could I take that? With regards to HbarSuite and Hedera, how people come to consensus is through validating any of the transactions. So when it comes to the validators, like I can become a validator, you can become a validator, and that's ultimately the only way to become decentralized, is by everyone knowing and validating the transactions of what are approved and coming to that consensus that he owns that house or he owns this much money, and then they combine and are able to make that transaction happen. So ultimately coming to decentralization is by everyone knowing and being able to transact from everyone having that knowledge and being passed from one node to another to approve the transactions. And that's why we see the vision of Hedera and HbarSuite to be able to bring that to a proper decentralized network.
What's the scaling story?
With the nodes,
Yeah.
so at the minute, so the Hedera nodes in itself are managed and governed by a group of 39, well it's actually 29 at the minute, but they're looking to be 39 entities. Those entities are made up of the likes of Google, LG, IBM, Deutsche Bank, Shinhan Bank, University College of London. So there's all these entities from all across the world, and it has to be decentralized from a corporation aspect, but all of them will be managed. They'll be starting off by running the nodes, which is on a proof of stake. But as that grows, the public validators will be released, and HbarSuite in itself runs a mirror node network of node validators to be able to actually integrate directly into the actual main network of Hedera. So HbarSuite is actually like a layer 1.5, for example. So we integrate directly into the hash graph, and to be able to communicate with all the other nodes and the validators to be able to prove the transactions. So as that network grows, it becomes more decentralized.
I'm just going to go back to Blake, and I think you're
Yeah.
going to answer the question.
Probably just to mirror some of those points, I think you're right to raise the idea of scale, because projects inherently, when they're small, are very centralized. As they grow and become more distributed and build communities, they naturally become more decentralized in the DeFi space, and I think that should be every project's goal, really.
Thank you guys. You guys doing a fantastic job. So, yeah, first time I'm a founder of a fintech mobile app. Tend to send money anywhere, cardless, cashless, and borderless, and instant installment. So I'm very interested in your notes, and I like your costs as well. So could we lock in that cost right now?
Community-based negotiations.
Yeah, but yeah. So my question is the smart nodes ready for fintech right across the board? And for that, if there's a bug in the protocol, how quickly would we be able to solve that? And the other one, or if not, are we going to recreate the new node again? And also,
Bro, that's 4 questions.
yeah, but it's all linked. It's all linked.
Yeah.
Because
This is a contextual.
we target the Asia Pacific market. We is the most expensive country to send money to in the world. They charge up to 26%.
Yeah.
So therefore, we want to target this market that they can send money and then be able to integrate with any other payment services, and then touch base on the lower side of things between countries and stuff. We already had a look. We kind of like mix a couple of softwares to be able to do that and comply at the same time.
So that's contextual. The first question was, around
The node,
smart nodes
the
that they
smart
run?
node, if it's ready.
They've been audited twice by HbarSuite Security. They're a prolific security audit company, and they have come back to us and said, yes, everything looks fantastic. We had to make a couple of adjustments, but the fact that we've got it done twice, they have done many numerous attempts at attacking the smart nodes, but have unsuccessfully been able to break into them basically. But as for like comparing to smart contracts, there's so many different exploits on smart contracts. The reason that we have developed smart nodes in itself is to be able to have that security, to enhance that security. That was the main focus of it. And the fact that the network is asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, which is the highest level of security that you can actually have on a network. We are actually working with that level of security. So to be able to corrupt it would have to corrupt more than a third of the network, or 2/3 of the network, I should say. So that's the smart nodes question. Next one.
The next one.
Look at you, 4 bites of the cherry.
Well, we are developing in 2 weeks' time, so I don't need to ask this. Oh yeah, you already asked. I jump quickly. This is probably maybe won't affect the smart nodes. We will be using in Asia Pacific. Most of them use satellite. We have been following the Starlink and the progress to this day. How strong or how low the Wi-Fi network would be able to get smart nodes to work in remote area, or it doesn't?
I will accept your question, and then afterwards we'll have a separate question that's less specific, more
Right.
general.
That's kind of more so relative to the actual infrastructure. So wherever you have internet, you will be able to transact with it. So it's more down to the infrastructure with that question. So that's nothing really we can really do about it, you know. It's nothing.
I'm going to introduce you guys on LinkedIn, and you're going to have this conversation. Anyone else? Come on.
James.
Sorry, are you I was just curious about Hedera, and because I read on the Wikipedia it said that it was proprietary, patented.
Yep.
So is that, and you said that the DAO and the DEX, and that's all open source. So is that right, that that's open source, and then the base kind of layer is all kind of?
So the entity that I'm from, we've actually built on top of Hedera. So HbarSuite is a DeFi of services who have created a replacement for the likes of smart contracts. So we're a different entity from Hedera in itself. So that will allow us to be able to go open source with whatever we so please. But at the minute, our Launchpad and our DAO are open source.
So you're a different entity from Hedera, and Hashgraph is also, is that different to Hedera?
Hashgraph is actually, so you've got the term blockchain. Because of the structure of it, it's just different. So the term hashgraph is the term given to
The DAX structure.
the structure, yeah.
Direct SCP, right? Thanks.
James, just you alluded to the fact that you brought some Web 2 thinking, possibly in the interface, I'm not sure,
Yep.
towards Web 3, and probably contrasting with what you were saying when with HBAR, where you didn't focus so much on the interface as opposed to the technology, and both had issues. How did, maybe you could elaborate a bit more on that Web 2 thinking and how that impacted?
Yeah, so we really drilled down on user journey optimization, right? And so one of the first products we released a couple of weeks after we launched was a product called Verify, and it was, if you've been in the Discord community, it's like you have to own this NFT to get in, and on Solana it's generally Metrica that you've got to use. And what they do is they scan the chain every 5 minutes and they see, have you got an NFT? The way we set everything up, it was instant. So the second you joined, if you already had an account with us, we knew what your Discord address, what your Discord account was, and we knew your wallets that you had connected to us. And so the second you joined that Discord community, we gave you the whole role and welcomed you into the general chat. So we called a passport. You didn't even have to sit there and go to a website anymore. You didn't have to leave Discord at all. The second you did that, it was done. Everyone loved it that understood it. The problem that we had was the education on people not understanding. And it's like, we had people bitching in holders chat. Like, how do I get verified?
What do I need to
You're
do
already
type
here.
of thing?
You're already verified. But I didn't even remember doing it, right? And so that was one of the big issues that we had. What we should have done was do that as an incremental change.
Sure.
And we should have gone, okay, so this is the accepted user pattern at the moment. We can do an incremental change through that, and then we can do another incremental change in a couple of months' time. We just wanted to wow people. And it wowed enough people, but it kind of like just hit that friction point where it was just that little bit too much.
Too much learning curve.
Yeah.
It's hard because you're so, like you alluded to before, there's so much to learn. And every time you look at a new thing, you're learning a bit more because it's advanced slightly.
Yeah.
And so if you move along that path and you're used to a process.
People in Web3 are super married to the idea of connected wallet.
Yes.
And so I firmly don't believe in it. I think that for us to hit mainstream, we need to have like user accounts in some fashion.
I'm with you on that.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, it's like, hey, you don't know me, but give me your bank account, right? And so I think that the average person, there's a lot of anxiety around doing that. And so I said this before was the start, like the technology, the whole industry has been nerds building technology for nerds for the last 10, 15 years. And people don't like feeling dumb. And so the average person, when you start using NFT acronyms and DeFi and all that kind of stuff, it goes straight over their head. And the second that you do that, you lose them as a user or a customer or just someone you're talking to, because your eyes just glossed over, right? And you just lost it. It doesn't matter what you say after that, they're done. And so we wanted to try and say, hey, look, we could do this. We just did it too fast. Would be my takeaway from that.
I think that's a lesson that can be taken on and off chain, right? Like the communication of anything that requires any sort of logical leap from here to there. Like, you can't assume that people follow the bouncing ball. And so it actually, and that's not dumbing it down, that's a real skill to be able to organize your thinking, and I am so bad at this, to be able to organize your thinking so people can like follow the thread. That's a like lesson that can be, I think, ubiquitous in whatever project you're trying to grow.
I'll just add to that. One of the other issues you ran into kind of parallel with that was that a significant portion of at least the Solana ecosystem, because of the low barrier to entry, it cost like fractions of a cent to send an NFT and mint an NFT and all the rest of it. A lot of it was from kind of third world countries where English isn't their first language.
Yes.
So when you're trying to change things and like they don't really understand what's happening already, that's something else we ran into, was like this language barrier, and along with the change of the way the service operated, it was kind of like, again, pushing shit uphill.
You assume everyone has the similar knowledge and skills that you do, which is
That's definitely a confirmation bias that any product manager tries to account for, but
Yes.
no one's perfect.
But the Bamboo product, I mean, I haven't used it, but I imagine is much closer to a user experience people are.
I've used it, it's actually really good. So
I'm not saying it's not good.
For him it's chilling. I've used it and it's actually a really, really nice interface and
The
everything
user,
else.
the product makes sense.
Yep.
To someone who's not crypto
for free,
native.
so they come to me and ask.
Yeah,
Can you help me sort this shit out?
It's like any other fintech application, yeah.
Question for Ronan. I'm the one, sorry.
You're the last question. There you
It's,
go.
it's on the FAQ. What is a smart node engine? And it says that you make use of an HCS and an HFS and an HTS to create smart node engines. What does this acronym stand for?
Hedera Consensus Service, Hedera Token Service, and what was the other one?
HTS. Oh, sorry, HFS.
Can't remember that off the top of my head.
I'm
sorry.
impressed you got two of them. I'm impressed you got the other two. So
Leo's like, let's look at
It's
this.
the same
There's
stuff.
always got to be one.
Well, yeah, I just want to thank you guys, James, Blake, and Ronan, for being brave enough to come up here and like lift up the kimono and share with us your lessons, because I think that the best thing about having community is the collective wisdom that you can kind of glean from each other. So I just want to say thank you so much. And it's block, fuck-ups, and hard truths on chain. I don't know how to make the thing work, so I'm not going to be afraid to be analog in a digital world. Final announcement. I'm going to verbalize. So, Oz DeFi has got a revamped new podcast, so it's Web3, AI, and more. I think more is going to come on the Discord, so if you have had a look at that QR code, please check in on the Oz DeFi channel. I'm really excited to talk about the next two events. So we do these things monthly. The next one's on the 28th of September. That's the last Thursday of the month. We're collabing with the UWA Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Research Centre, so we're going to bring academia and industry together to kind of exchange insights and talk about what some of the possibilities might be at that intersection. That's very cool. Stay tuned for that. That's in 4 weeks, 28th of September. We'll send out a meetup. You'll probably get in your inbox. 12th of October, so 2 weeks after that, we've got Magnet Capital from Sydney flying to Perth. They are an institutional investor exclusively for digital assets. The theme is going to be lessons learned from an asset manager. What they're going to be talking about is their investment thesis, the macro trends that support that, like the tailwinds, and what macro things have transpired that actually flummoxed them. So I want them to talk about certain of their portfolio companies that didn't work out and why. So that will be kind of cool. I think it's nice to have a mix of talking about the projects and then talking about the investment lens and also talking about the academic lens to kind of make it a bit multi-dimensional. And finally, if you haven't already, you can come up here with your phone and look at the QR code. But I just want to say thank you guys, especially everybody who's new to the community. I know that you've had different iterations and lots of other crypto and DeFi and blockchain groups here in Perth, and I'm really glad that you've chosen to come to Oz DeFi, and I want to say thank you very much once again, especially to our sponsors, Bamboo, F Off, HbarSuite, SpaceCube, Aviatrix, and Oz DeFi, and to all you guys. So please continue to eat and drink. We have so much oversupply of food and booze, it would really be a shame to
And
let
thank
it
you to
go waste.
Kat for organising this and being the chapter lead.
Guys.